G'day and welcome to Bikes and Bits 1000. Join me as we install the GIVI Stop Light Kit into my top box. Alright, as mentioned, we're going to be installing the stop light kit. So what you need on this is the top box, and the stop light kit. Now this is specific to my box being the V47, so this stop light kit's called the E135. So let's just open it up. It's pretty straightforward in terms of its parts. Different wiring in there, and which joins the bike to the box, and the LEDs. And if you saw from my previous video, I installed the top box. We will now be continuing, I'll be cutting back to that with installing the wiring, and to start with we've got to fit the wiring to the actual plate where the top box attaches, and then we'll do the box itself. So the instructions now require the actual plate that the bag goes on to. When you're putting the wiring kit, you've got to knock this little piece out. Now it actually says to do it with a hammer. So, and I have seen it online, but we'll give it a go. I'm going to actually use a socket to and then a hammer to try and knock that out. So I'll see how we go. I think this is the reason why this is obviously the M7, as I mentioned earlier on. The M8 and the M9s I don't think have this that you can knock out. I think that's why they're not compatible with the brake light. That may change or from my video, but at the time of me looking at it in 2022, that was the case. Alright, let's give this a whirl. Well, true to their word, it does knock out. I ended up replacing the socket for this big 14mm Allen, and it just punched it right out. So make sure that's got a bit of a clean. Yeah, it's pretty clean. I'm going to test fit the wiring and see how it looks. Alright, so I've got to wire this up, and this is part of the reason I didn't completely tighten everything up in the first video, because I'm going to have to take some of this apart again. So let's just get to it. Alright, so when you're putting in the wiring kit, you've got to find the brake light. Now this connector is obviously a 3-pin. So using a multimeter, I've worked out the left side here is ground, middle is the brake light, and the right is the just the normal tail light. The way I actually did it, just had the bike on, grounded the electrode from the multimeter, the ground one, and then put the positive in the center, put the brake light on, went to 12 volts, took the brake off, went to 0 volts, and just to make sure the right hand one was showing 12 volts constant when the ignition was on. That's how you do it. Alright, so now we've got to tap into that. Alright, so I've wired this up using the supplied connectors. I have had to drop out the whole base just to get to it. Something to mention as well, I said before in my previous video you could just remove the rack with the 2 bolts. Now the problem is the wiring, obviously, and I've drilled a hole just in there just to get the wiring through. I'm actually going to put a quick connector on it at a later date so I can take it off, but obviously being hardwired in, can't just take the rack off as mentioned, but there are ways to do it. I might do a video later on about it, or just show us a bit of an update. But anyway, that's wired up, so now time to put the bike back together. I will say I'm not the biggest fan of these, but look, came with the kit, so I'll just do them. But please ensure though, you check the voltage with the multimeter at the back here, because when I did one of the connectors, it didn't actually connect properly. The ground one didn't actually seat properly, so I had to redo it. So just make sure you're actually checking the voltage. Okay. Alright, now that we're back in the shed, we're going to wire up the case now that the bike's done. So firstly, similar to the mounting plate, we have to knock out a hole there to so the electrical connection can feed through. Anyway, I'll try the same method and see how we go. Yep, once again used a socket on the inside and with a hammer, and managed to get it out. So next you got to take out 4 screws. That one, There's one up there and on the other side. These ones are easy. These are bloody hard to get out. They just don't know what it is about them, but getting there. Okay, now I've got those out. So these are on the side. Now we get to put the LED strips in. And I just noticed before you put the LED strips in, there's no actual place for the wire to go through. But I did notice, I don't know if you can see it, there's a little mark just here which I think you actually drill into so the wires can feed through. So we're going to do that. Alright, it doesn't have to be too big. I think I've used about a 3mm drill bit on that. You can see that wire goes through nicely. So I'll just do the same on the other side. Now they're both in, time to stick the LEDs down. Now I think we need to be a bit careful with this because to make sure that the LEDs are going to line up with the holes on this thing. Alright, there they in there. I might just do a quick check, hook up a small 12-volt battery to make sure they're working. And there it's working. The flashing is just because the battery connection's a bit loose, but there we go. Okay, both LEDs are in. Now we're just going to do the wiring inside. Alright, now you've got to wire up the LED bare wires into this thing. Now when you do it, you got to thread the wires through this thing first. I also recommend putting the grub screws in first. Oh, see them there. It'll make it much easier to thread the wire. If you're having trouble getting those wires through, do what I did, took a drill bit to it. The bloody hole, you could get 2 wires through, but you couldn't get the 4, so a little bit of widening. Alright, once that's done, it just clips onto the top of the case like that. And for correct reference, it's like that. I had the case upside down to work on it easier. Okay, so now we've got to fit the final piece through. You've got to thread this through the bottom of the case with this part first, and then this clips on. Just there, and then you've got to secure the back. Now you just got to make sure the polarity is right. I've just been testing it with the multimeter, but still got to get this in. It's not quite in all the way yet. So that's now sitting flush. So we'll just tidy up the wiring inside. All right, when it's wired up, this is what it looks like. Thanks very much for joining me on this install. If you like this sort of content and more DIY on the bikes, like and subscribe, and I'll catch you on the next video. Cheers!